Hey, what's happening everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I wanted to show you how you can get a cinematic style scene by exposing for your window light. Let's get into it. So you arrive on set and you see these nice big windows and you think, now that's a great background. There's nice scenery outside, there's light bouncing everywhere. This is gonna be a piece of cake. Right? You get the footage in post and you start to realize that it's not looking quite like you wanted. I know all too well the frustration, so I wanted to share with you how I achieved this look. But first, really quickly, two things. Number one, I'm not sponsored by any of the things that I'm about to use in this video. And number two, thanks for being here. All right, so let's get into the setup. First thing you wanna think about is exposing for your window light. So when you first walk in, you have all this window light, you're gonna want to expose for your subject, in this case, myself. And even though I am exposed correctly in camera, you notice that the windows behind me are completely blown out, and this does not look good. So what you see now is that my camera is exposed for me. So you can see me in this room with the amount of light that's coming in from the window light. However, our issue is that the highlights in the window are blown out, making this look not so realistic. It kind of will pull your viewers out of the scene and out of the film and out of the story. So what we want to do is make everything look as realistic as possible by exposing for these windows behind me. So what I like to do is slap on a ND filter. This just means that you have full control of the amount of light that is hitting your sensor. So you can either go really bright or much darker. Here is the one that I like to use on my Sony FX3. Once you have that, slap that bad boy on and adjust it until your windows are exposed properly. Now, at this point, you might be saying, well, what about my subject? Well, I have something for that too, but before we get there, I wanna address one thing, and that is changing light. Let me explain. When you're shooting against window light, the light outside is gonna be changing. Especially if you have a sunny day with partial clouds, your light is gonna be changing every time a cloud moves in front of the sun. So you're gonna want either a really clear day or a very cloudy day, which I have here. So I exposed for my window, and for some reason I decided to use the other window. So I just moved things around a bit, and here we are. And just like that, it already looks so much better in here. So now the next step is going to be blocking the light from the window beside me and then exposing for the window behind me. After I did that, I wanted to remove some of the light coming in from the other window. So I just pulled down the blackout shade that we have on that window. I also turned off all of the additional lighting that we had in there, the warm tungsten lighting coming from all the practicals in the room. Okay, so now that I've exposed for my window, it's now time to light up the subject. In this case, it would be me. Now for this technique, you're gonna want very bright video light. And the reason is because you're gonna be combating the sun or the outdoor natural light that's coming through the window. Ideally, I would probably use an aperture 300 or something as strong as that. I used my aperture 120D and this worked out pretty good. I decided to put a softbox on it just so you could see what that looks like. I am now exposed, however, it's not quite enough. It's not as much as I would like. And this is at 100% right now. So it just goes to show you that you really need a hot light source for this technique to work. Now we got an overcast day today, so we got really lucky when it comes to harsh lighting from the sunlight. So it looks really good today. However, I have used this technique when the sun was blazing through the window on a blue sky day. Here's an example of that. Because we're trying to get a more movie style cinematic look for, let's say, a narrative film, I definitely think that this lighting could be a bit too harsh. And even though I have this big softbox on it now, it's definitely not exactly what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is more of a realistic style scene. So if I were to sit in this room and window light was spilling in from behind me, it would spill on the white wall in front of me and give me a nice roll off naturally. Now, you could do this with just a softbox and that would make everything much easier, but because I want to try and make this scene look as realistic as possible, I want the roll off of my highlights and shadows to run smoothly across my subject's face. And also too, I want to diffuse most of the light that's going through this lighting fixture. So I wanted to double down and just provide a bigger source of diffusion. For this, I decided to use unbleached muslin because I was wanting to get a little bit more of a warmer look to match the practical in the background. I love this stuff because it's super effective and it's not gonna break the bank. I think it's about $10 per yard. So once I set up my scrim, I set up my aperture 120D, which ended up not being bright enough. So I had to bring in a sidekick, and that was the Amaran 200D. I put both of them at 100%, and I had one a little closer to try and just light my face up just a little bit more, and I had one a little further back, staggering them to try and provide a little bit more of a softer light. After this, I noticed that there was light spilling all over the room, and I have lighter walls in there, so I decided to set up some black solid. This is just a curtain that I had lying around, a blackout curtain. I just clamped that to the C-stand of the scrim and taped it to the wall, and it worked out great. After this, I noticed that there was light spilling onto the shadow side of my face, so I decided to set up some negative fill. Once again, grabbing my trusty boom mic stand. This is the thing you probably saw in my last video. Anyway, this added a lot of depth to the scene, and then after that, I decided to remove all of the things that were on the desk behind the couch. So really quickly, I just added a few things here to make it look a bit more realistic to the scene. And then I added 2 more lights. The first was this ambit full tube light. I love this thing. I set it to about 2500 Kelvin to make it a little warmer and match the practical lighting that was behind me, and to fill in the corner a little bit more. It's not a huge difference because we're exposing for the window. It was bright enough to be able to fill in that corner a little bit and to make things look a little bit more realistic, as if that light was spilling from the practical light. After this, I just noticed that the plant behind me could use a little bit of light as well, so I used this little aperture light. Once again, I just figured it out, and I just gaff taped this thing to the back of the couch, and that did the job. Once I was done here, I wanted to add a little bit more depth, so I decided to add a little bit of haze. Now, you could certainly go without this step if you like. The scene looks great as it is. If I were to make a short film or a cinematic style TV commercial, I definitely want it to look a little more like this, especially when indoors and we're featuring light within the shot. I'm using my haze machine here, but you could use spray haze. It's pretty affordable on Amazon. I didn't have any spray haze on me, so I'm using my machine, and I just added a little bit of haze. Just a little bit to soften things up a little bit and add a little more to that cinematic movie style look that we're going for here. And that is it, my friends. Here's a quick look of the work that we just did, starting with the overexposed window, then exposing for our window light, then adding our key light with our negative fill, our filler light in the back, and then our haze. I don't get to shoot towards the window very often, but I do really love this technique a lot. I know that a setup like this could look a little intimidating, but the best part about this whole thing is that it's super simple to set up. I just want to encourage you to go out and try these techniques for yourself and come up with something that works best for you. Well, that's gonna do it for me, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this quick tutorial on how to expose for your window light. If you like this video or you learned something, please click the like button down below. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.